Hi everyone, I'm Janvi. I am so excited to make a video. It's been a long time and I am generally so busy in work. And this summer, I'm also doing additional coursework that I need to do as per requirements. So it just gets so busy. So finally, I decided today that no matter how much work pending and homework I have, I want to still set time aside and just say hi to all of you. So I have taken some time to prepare for this video because I'm going to speak a little bit about my educational journey in India and America and comparing the two experiences in terms of cultural differences, coursework. So, what I've done is I went back and looked at all of my mark sheets and found out which courses I took when to be able to show it to you all so you know what I studied in bachelor's, what I studied in my master's, which was both in India and now what I'm studying in terms of coursework in America. So, before I begin, I also want to say that very soon I'm making videos with other students who have studied in America. So, they've done a bachelor's in America in psychology. So, I'll be making videos with them. I'll also be making videos of contrasting how psychology in India is in terms of like typical college expectations. What all do we do? How do we study? What is the coursework? And then also how it is different in America. And also the same with masters is I'll make a video with someone who's done a master's in counseling psychology and contrast that with my master's, which was in counseling psychology, but in India. So how it's different in the US and in India, how they're studied differently, what is your experience like, how are the experiences different. So there's a lot coming up, other topics such as neuropsychology and different types of masters available in America. I'm going to be making a video on that too, especially because fields like neuropsychology are not it's not available at least as of now to do a master's in India. So I'm going to begin my presentation. I made a presentation today because it was so much to organize that I didn't want to miss any points. So here it is. And I also like making these presentations because my PPT is like a paid version here. So it's just easier because yeah, they make automatic designs. So I really enjoyed doing that. So I'm speaking a little bit about how I studying in psychology different in India versus in America. Um, Again, this is my subjective experience, and in I am only one person. I've been only to one college. So with for my bachelor's, master's, and PhD. So it's going to be specific to the college that I'm in and those experiences, but I still hope that it gives you some description. Okay, so I chose to share my pictures. This is something also I learned from America. A lot of professors in America show that. This is a little bit about myself. So I thought I could do that too. This is me, and all the pictures are taken at my university campus. So my BA in psychology from India, master's also from India, and PhD in America. BA was from St. Xavier's, and master's from SNDT University. Okay, so first beginning with an overview of coursework, and then I will show you my comparisons and also my personal experiences. So in India, when you do a BA, you have to do lots of coursework. It's, I think, the same in America. So first year I did those general courseworks like English, Hindi, those subjects. But I'm going to show you only psychology on this slide. So only the courses that I took related to psychology in BA are up on this slide. So, Introduction to Psychology 1 was something I did in the first semester where we learned, I still remember, a lot about the behavior, what is behavior, Skinner, and different Thorndike, and all of those basic Albert Bandura, and what is human behavior, what is mind, what is emotions. Again, semester 2, Introduction to Psychology 2. This was also like an introduction. What I already am starting to say, what I really love, I'm going to be speaking both about what I absolutely love about Indian education and also some critiques, and same with America. I think one of my favorite things about the Indian education system is that it has a very nice continuation model, which means that you do part one here and part two here. And it's pretty much similar. BA course structure is pretty much similar across, at least this is from Mumbai. So colleges in Mumbai will follow a similar course structure. Again, year semester first in the year two. So year two, I did three subjects on psychology. So I did social psychology, developmental psychology, and psychology of adjustment um, in my first semester. And again, your semester two was a continuation of. So like developmental psychology, we used a book. I'm not in my office, so my book is there, but we use Feldman and Papalia, and from before conception until I think adolescence, we did in the first semester, and then middle adulthood to death, we did in the second semester, for example, in developmental psychology. And also, like, we had to know inside out these textbooks, at least in St. Xavier's College. Social psychology, oh, I loved social psychology. We studied so many interesting things. We studied interpersonal attraction, we studied conformity, basically social processes. So, compliance, conformity, obedience, destructive obedience was very interesting thing. We studied motivation, and basically we studied a lot of things in our time. I do remember also studying things like identity and those things in social psychology. Psychology of adjustment was more about learning, like work, a little bit about what is work like. It included a lot of different concepts, relationships, basically psychology in your daily life. Very, very interesting course again. The next year, which was year three, this was my major. So I majored in full psychology, which means I did 6 papers of psychology. And again, this was like continuation. So basically, we used to take year-long courses. So we take one textbook and study it for the whole year. So psychometrics and statistics, part one and part two, as you can see in semester two. Abnormal psychology, basically you study different disorders. What is abnormality defined in psychology? Industrial organizational psychology, very interesting to, studying about job satisfaction, how to study that, and different kinds of things with that. Cognitive psychology was also very, very interesting. We studied different chapters, including brains, what part does what. I still remember my notes, like cerebellum, I would make a belly dancer because it's related to motor movement, or hypothalamus, and I made a person who's eating, or like amygdala, like an emotional person. So basically studying a lot of the brains and brain stuff, and yeah, a lot of that in part one and two. And practicals, we had to do experiments. So we had to find a new participant every week or every week-ish, and then do experiments on them. And then counseling psychology. Basically, this was an introduction to counseling psychology for the first time. Amazing course again. We studied different things, including micro counseling skills. We like what is reflection, what is immediacy. We also studied things like how should your office setting be, what is ideal, basics of theories, like what are the 3 core principles of Carl Rogers, and then it became 4 eventually, but your empathy, genuineness, unconditional positive regard, all of those things we studied in counseling psychology. So that was my BA. So after finishing BA in psychology, I went on to doing my MA. MA had, again, MA is 2 years. So MA had a different course each semester, which was also a unique experience. So year one, semester one, we had, all of them were like, I think, 4 credit courses. So cognitive processes, research, again, cognitive processes similar to cognitive psychology, research methodology. Oh yeah, and in cognitive psychology, we also learned reasoning, like inductive and deductive reasoning. Very, very interesting subject. We also studied decision making and different models of decision making, heuristics, biases. Very, very interesting stuff. Research methodology, theories of personality. In research methodology, we studied different types of methods that I used to research. Theories of personality, we studied obviously so many types of theories. We studied reality therapy. Sorry. This is not theories of psychotherapy. Sorry. This is theories of personality. This was a very interesting course too. We studied different people, like Hans Eysenck, and his theory of personality, his test of personality. What did he do then what was Alport's definition, Cattell, what was his perspective to personality. In fact, we also went to a lot in depth of Carl Jung and Adler and Freud, like basically all the neo-Freudians. Very, very interesting course, one of my favorites. Then we did psychological testing, where we study reliability, validity, and all of those constructs, which is psychometrics and statistics. And then psychological testing practical. So we administered a lot of the tests. And so we would, oh no, the first year we did a lot of experiments also. So administering the self-directed search, which is an interest test for career guidance, or aptitude tests like the DBDA, or the DAT, differential aptitude test, or EQ, the EIS, emotional intelligence scale test. So administering those, and so that was what was in first semester. Second semester was neurocognition. Again, a lot to do with, we had a professor who was a psychiatrist, so that was also very interesting. We learned about neurons and brains and how communication happens. And basically a lot also about how a lot of the medicines work, in case of depression, or how do the SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and all of those work. So very interesting course again. Application of stats in psychological testing. Sorry, that's a typo. So yeah, this was stats. We learned to physically manually do a lot of our statistics, learning how to do chi-squares and t-tests and ANOVA and COVA, MANOVA and MANCOVA, and also like the other the tests, other sorts of tests that were there. I think we also did ROC curves in this class. Very, very much fun. Positive psychology. Obviously, oh, again, I think I need to correct this typo because I was just, sorry, I'm just tired. So, positive psychology, we studied, you know, a lot about resilience, self-efficacy, optimism, hope, flow, happiness, basically theories of happiness, subjective well-being. And I loved it. I'm doing research in positive psychology now. And then again, psychological practical, which is experiments in psychological testing. The second year, we did psychology of adjustment. Again, if you notice, this was also there in my BA. I did it for one whole year. So again, this is psychology BOA 2 or 3, I think they called it. Okay, yeah, anyways. So it was like an extension of what we did here. We also did suicide, coping, a lot of those things. Assessment in counseling psychology was a brilliant course. We studied lots of types of assessment. This again is very different. I will mention that later. But again, in India, we also studied a lot of projective tests of personality, which we don't study here in America. But we did personality assessment. We did like we also did IQ, like the MISIC, which is Mullen's intelligence scale for children, which is like the Indian version of the IQ test for children here, which is WISC. Yeah, so we did a lot of assessments like depression, anxiety, sentence completion tests. The list is endless. I'm pretty surprised at the number of things that we did in one master's, which again is a little different in America. I will tell you shortly. Intervention in counseling psychology. Again, here I believe we studied different theories. Brilliant course. Again, reality therapy. We studied transaction analysis, acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, a lot of those. And research. Again, semester research, we were obviously starting to work on our master's dissertation. So those kinds of things. Again, orientation to special areas in counseling. I really love this course. We studied about how to do grief counseling, or how to do counseling for like career counseling, different types of, again, counseling approaches. Yeah, I need to double check what was the difference in counseling approaches and interventions in counseling, but yeah, basically again going on what approaches we use for different types of issues, such as, one of my favorite textbooks that I in my master's program was the grief counseling by Wharton, I believe. So again, learning those different subfields, geriatric population. How do you work with geriatric population? What are the different kinds of approaches you would use for children? So very interesting research, and again internship. This was also very interesting. Although we started internship in the first year itself, um, but first semester itself. Sorry, in the second year. So that was interesting. Now I'm coming to America, and in America, there is a lot of core requirements that needs to be done to get a degree in counseling psychology in America. So here are my courses. First semester was ethics, neuropsychology. Practicum basically is like a course where you enroll, where you all get together and, consult about your cases with a supervisor. And in America, there's a lot of liability coverage that needs to be done, So practicum courses are for that. So every semester, if every semester has a practicum course. And again, psychopathology across lifespan, which is a DSM course. In India, DSM was done only by clinical psych people. We were told to buy and read the book, but we don't give diagnosis. We don't have to. We're not forced to give diagnosis in India. Here, everything is covered by insurance, so that needs to be done. Again, semester 2, we did IQ assessment. So the whole course was only on IQ assessment, which again is so different from masters, where assessment was like general, where we did so many assessments. Again, I think, again, I felt like that was very feasible also because we had so much background. Like when I did IQ assessment here, I did not spend any time learning theories. But because in my masters, when I was doing an assessment course, I directly learned IQ, how to administer IQ tests, because I knew like intelligence theories, and I had studied intelligence for several years by now. So I had known theories, Spearman and Gardner and Thurstone, and so many theories of intelligence, and obviously Wechsler and the whole history. We spent so much time learning Terman and how first IQ test was developed. So I think it was okay for masters, but like here it was like very specific, and we only did IQ assessments and different types of IQ assessments, like the WAIS, the Wechsler's adult intelligence scale, and then the WISC and the WIPSI. So different types, but it was specially dedicated to IQ. Intermediate statistics was another course where we did basically logistical regression, but we in fact learned a little more about R, and how to use your statistics into a software, which was again different from India. In India, we did stats, but never learned, and we didn't have resources to a lot of, although R is free, but again, we didn't have a lot of resources. Like in America, I have access to SPSS whenever I want, which is like which is a software to do analysis through my university computers, right? So we did that, again different from stats in India. We did introduction to counseling psychology directly, part 2, because it incorporated, I believe, both 1 and 2. And basically this was micro counseling skills and those basics of counseling. And then practicum course, again, year 2, semester 1 was research writing, where you learn how to write a paper, and basically our assignments were on what paper are you writing for your article 1 in PhD. So all of that. Work psychology, we did career counseling theories, different theories for career counseling and work psychology. Group counseling was, we actually participated in a process group, and also did, which means that all the classmates were actually in a group therapy sort of a situation. And we also studied group counseling. We used Yalom's book. Again, group counseling. Oh, I remember in my master's, counseling approaches would have like group counseling, right? It was a part of counseling approaches, and this was a course in itself. Then we had practicum. Again, year 2, semester 2, we had personality assessment. Then we had process and outcomes in psychotherapy, which was unique. I have never studied process and outcomes in psychotherapy, which I will talk to you about later. Theories in psychotherapy. So every week we would read one theory. Here, what was different is I felt like in masters, we took theories like very slowly. Like we studied theories of personality. So for example, when I studied psychoanalysis, I first studied a lot of Freudian and Neo-Freudian theory. Or when I studied Gestalt, I studied Gestalt theory first, and then I studied Gestalt as a therapy. Here, on the other hand, I think we directly studied theories, then practicum again, and psychometrics is something summer, which is like a summer course. Semester three, again, educational psychology. There'll be history and systems of psychology, which I believe goes into the history, qualitative research, practicum. Yeah, qualitative research is specific to qualitative. Again, social psychology, CP3 will be like we learn to be, we might get opportunities to supervise another student when we are supervised. How would that be? Things like that. Multicultural counseling, again, a big thing, a special course here. In India, I can go back to my bachelor's, and bachelor's in one, I believe in my counseling psychology course, we did a whole module on um, career on multicultural counseling. But the thing is, here, if you notice in America, you see, and I'm going to talk more about it in my further slides, is that if there is one course, they will only talk about it. And whereas in India, it was very integrated. Like when I studied social psychology, we started from the history. So knowing about who is Kurt Lewin, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but starting from how did the field come into, same with cognitive psychology or neurocognition, how did the field come into play? So history was embedded in each of these and heavy theory. So I think like in counseling psychology too, I remember we also studied about assessment and psycho diagnostic assessment, which means how do you use counseling and assessment to, how do you use results of assessment to incorporate it in counseling. So I think overall they did a brilliant job of combining different things to be able to incorporate it later. Anyways, now coming to differences. So here I would say that MA in counseling psychology, I would say that we mostly did advanced level coursework because a lot of the subjects, like I said, the psychology of adjustment, cognitive psychology, neurocognition, these are like extensions, like moving beyond what we've already studied in bachelor's. Again, in PhD okay, this, let me just go on to PhD later. But yeah, again, I felt like very, very advanced level coursework in masters directly. So because it's understood everybody follows the same pathway to get there, almost the same pathway. Counseling psychology was a department of psychology. So I think there was a strong foundational coursework in psychology, like at least in my time, bachelor's was compulsory to get into a master's in psychology, right? So now it's changing, but still very few colleges have a master's where you can apply without a bachelor's in psych. So very strong foundations, and like the implicit expectation was that you use that, you incorporate, because the knowledge in psychology is very helpful, right? You have such a strong foundation on theories. How does Eysenck understand human beings? Um how did Freud understand human condition? How did Erik Erikson understand it? How did Milton Erickson understand it? So many. How did Jean Piaget think of child development or attachment theories very much in depth? We studied all of these things, even developmental psychology, genetics, conception, birth, problems at birth, what is normal, abnormal, what is the rate of, lots of those things. So we are incorporating a lot of that in India. Um, we still theoretically, I think, use some classical approaches like psycho. When I studied psychodynamic approach, I studied classical psychodynamic approach, which is again different in America, which I'll talk about shortly. And again, we are more outcome oriented. Even when you get a job, they want to see results, they want to see change. When you're in private practice, they're like, I want to see improvement in my son, right? And I think that used to be the case also in America, especially with the behavioral movement and all of that. But America is now shifting more towards, what I'm noticing is relational and process related things, but we are still outcome related. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's how I've experienced being in India, is they want to see what's the improvement. If a child is out of class and coming to therapy with you, is the child performing better in school? Very important outcome. So those things would define you as a psychologist, and that was an expectation. And again, generic. When I was in masters, nobody was expected to specialize. In America, when I came in the class, everybody's like, I'm child focused, I'm adult focused. You can be a generic focus to like a generalist too, but in general, you have the option to be, like what they call a super specialization. Like some people are like focused on children, but only children with autism. Some people are only doing neuropsychology in children. Some people are doing neuropsychology only in adults. Some people are doing only sports psychology. In India, you had to do everything, one man show. It's just like I compare this with Hollywood and Bollywood films. Like in Hollywood films, an actor only acts, and obviously they're brilliant. But in Bollywood film, an actor also needs to dance. Like for a song, there's a song. So I think India in general, you have to do multiple things at the same time. So I think being super specialized is actually not much of an option. You might not find a supervisor to guide you. Like if you're like, no, I only want to work with this one specific population. Yes, you can eventually, but right from the program, even in a PhD, you might be able to try to do research in that, but generally it's sometimes hard. For example, you're like, no, I only want to work with cancer patients. You can find sites that do, but again, that's limited exposure. You might not find a professor who has just a specialization in cancer therapy, right, or grief therapy. In America, you get those options. So again, now coming to America, here subjects such as ethics and TNO, process and outcome. I did study ethics in my psychology in BA, but it was not a special course. This was a whole special course. Process and outcomes was again a process and outcomes basically is studying what makes research of what makes therapy use good in terms of its outcome. What is it, for example, research says, for example, shorter amount of session or like limited sessions for mild psychological concerns is more beneficial than too many sessions. But for serious concerns, more sessions are more beneficial than less sessions. Similarly, lot of other research like use of cultural, like a multicultural perspective and orientation is more likely to be beneficial to therapy. So we did a whole course on this. Again, you can choose your theory and go in depth. In India, like here, when I came, everybody said, uh-oh, this always happens with me. Right. In India, I mean, it's just emails and WhatsApps popping up. But in India, you can see that I never saw anybody in my class that from my orientation, I'm from ACT, and from my orientation, this is what we do here in classrooms. And again, this could be specific to my university. It may be different in other universities. Some universities are only psychodynamic oriented. Some universities are cognitive oriented. So it could be different, but like at least in my university, it's like you can choose your theory and you're not expected to really be an expert on the other theories. I felt like in India, you were expected to know all theories. You can't tell a teacher that I don't know PCT so much because I'm ACT. Like I don't know person-centered therapy as much because I'm focused on acceptance and commitment therapy, because you kind of had to know everything. They're like, you're studying psychology for so many years, why not? Right. Again, counseling psychology, at least in many university, it's in the College of Education because of its assessment background, unlike India. Um, and then there are modern approaches to therapy, like transactional analysis. I read in my textbook that it was not available, right, in America. Same way, here they use more of TLDP, which is time limited dynamic psycho therapy, right? So it's more relational and process oriented, and there's so much focus on, like, I never studied, again, not so much of interpersonal therapy. I think those things are more, again, culturally also, I'm thinking of how they're more suited for America. I think that's why we don't do it. But like here, the focus is a lot on, hey, what's going on between us? That sort of a conversation, which was not so much of a conversation in India. Specialization focused. So here you can, like I said, you can just be, from the first day you come into a PhD program, you can be like, I only want to do neuropsychology practicums. Well, there's a good chance that you might be able to do that because there's unlimited options here. In terms of experience, I would say in India, I felt like there was heavy emphasis on learning the theory first and only then pursuing practicum and internship. So from the beginning in colleges, we are told again and again, it's not easy to be a therapist. It's not easy to be out there, start practice. It's not easy. Like we were told that so many times that sometimes people are so scared that they don't even pursue psychology after finishing a master, like after having the degree, right? Whereas here, I think it's pretty integrated. Like a lot of students who have no exposure, they do 1 year, maybe they do like a few courses in psychology, and they just know very, very basics, and they start seeing clients. So it's like you learn together, sort of a thing. Um, India is more directive. You're told by your supervisors what to do, right? Here you can create your own path. You can be like, well, I want to be a counselor who's like this. In India, all of us take the same courses because we don't have options, right? We all take the same courses. We graduate with the same degree. It's exactly the same. My degree and my ability to do something is exactly the same as every other student in my class because we all did internships in schools. Everybody from first standard to 10th standard students, all of us were seeing the same kind of population, right? Because we don't have much options and we could choose one internship of our choice, but then again, that's like our main internship in my master's course was in a school, and that was the same for everyone, right? And we took the exact, like I said, my bachelor's and my master's. In America, people make their own trajectory right from bachelor's. So they're like, I'm going to do cognitive, but not do social psychology because I'm interested more in cognitive. So they will only take courses related to that. We have a fixed set of courses, right? So I think, yeah, it's more directive. Here you can create your own path. In India, you have limited options. Here you have so many options. In India, it's not very flexible to shift streams. So if I started counseling psychology, I just can't suddenly be like, okay, now I want to be a clinical psychologist. That's hard. Here, it's comparatively flexible. Like generally, most clinical psychologists I heard do neuropsychology, but here I'm like, um, I am doing counseling psychology and I'm getting interested in neuropsychology. So probably next year I'll be doing a practicum in neuropsychology, right? So I think it's pretty flexible in that way. Again, in masters there was a constant expectation to be vulnerable or open. Like that's a cultural thing in India. Like your professors know you inside out. And it's like a given. So if you're from India watching this, I never understood these things when I was in India because I was like, yeah, obviously it's supposed to be like that, right? But like in America, again, it's you can choose to be personal about your life, and you can be like, I don't want to share, and nobody's going to force you. Not like in India, they used to force you, but it's just like a cultural difference, like, right? When you go and sit on the bus, people, the first thing they might ask you is like, hey, what do you do? Oh, psychology. How much do you make? Right? This is a question generally people in America wouldn't ask you. Um, so, or like private, like, oh, you got divorced. Why? Why did you leave your wife? You shouldn't have done that. That happens in India. Um, and and again, when I say that it's different, I don't say that one culture is better than the other. I see positives of both. Because sometimes people want that, right? They want to feel like, yeah, apnapan in Hindi. Again, here also, again, the freedom that is there, I believe, in India is also in terms of practice, because we're not here in America. Everything is like run by insurance. There's like law and ethical guidances. In India, it's pretty chill in those matters. Like we're like, here it's like we're very cautious. You have to make sure that you're getting everything in a certain way, because obviously America is also a developed country, so they have a lot developed systems in place to make sure that you're doing your job in a certain way. Again, insurance pays for it. So in India, if your session went for 1.5 hours instead of 1 hour, nobody's going to come and audit you. In America, if you keep doing long, long, long sessions because you're billing the insurance, then that's not like, a lot of the things are dictated by insurance, and that's why research also informs policies which affects insurance and how people practice. Like, so I think I had a lot of freedom in India when I was practicing to decide how long my session will. I mean, there is law, we kind of keep it the same for everyone, but just in case if there's an emergency, you can keep it longer than that, right? In India, there are no strict laws about, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Here it's like extremely strict, and that's why also explains we did an ethics course especially. Now I'm getting tired. It's the end of the day. So cultural differences, but I'm super passionate about this. I hope you guys Feel free to ask any questions in the comments of this video and I'll try to get back to you. Cultural differences, MA in counseling psychology. We had a lot of emphasis on clothes, like makeup was not allowed. I mean, people were actually like yelled at and were given warnings to be kicked out of the program if they wore makeup on internship. Right here, it's like freedom. You can dress whatever you want and have your own personality, right? um, Professor student relationship again in India is very different. When you go to a professor, you look for guidance, you seek suggestion. In America, there's less power difference, so a lot of times the professors will expect you to figure your way out or like help you figure your own way out, but they won't give you a road. In India, they used to give you a roadmap, and sometimes, honestly, like if you ask for that here, that's possible, but it's not like a natural path, right? In India, it's pretty much a natural path. So again, we follow instructions from supervisors. My experience talking about my clients to my supervisors used to be like I used to show it to my supervisor, and my supervisor like, okay, do this, do this, do this. And she would also ask me, what do you think, what do you want to do? But again, I could seek guidance from her, and this is again a cultural thing. In India, we as kids, we ask our parents, we make career choices, which is a generally a family decision, right? Parents guide us throughout that, do this, do that. Here, it's like when you're 18, you move out of the house, you pay your own bills, you find your own way out. In India, it's not that. Even with marriage, it's a family decision. You can't just tell your parents, okay, cool, bye, I'll make my own part, I'll find my own partner, get married. ऐसा तो नहीं होता. So I think that's overall like a cultural difference that shows up also in the education system. Here, you can choose your own style and can disagree with supervisors. In India, and it's also like that respect you hold for someone, and who has so much more experience. But in America, they're like, yeah, I do have experience, but maybe I may be wrong. I'm still may be wrong, right? So they might offer more reflection than guidance. Again, in India, expect like we used to have Viva, and it used to be like by heart. Like I could not tell. I mean, if I did not, I was not able to answer what all subtests are there in the differential aptitude test, then I won't get marks. Here, those like by hearting and all that is not expected. Like even today, ask me what is the definition of intelligence. I'll tell you by heart. Aggregator is the aggregate or global capacity of an individual to think rationally, act purposefully, and deal effectively with his or her environments by Bachelor, right? Or Gordon Alport's definition of personality. It's the organization within an individual. So I mean, we had to know these things, right? We did not have an option to not know. Here it's like I administered the ways, the IQ test, but never was my professor asking me, tell me all the subtests, tell me how to do this, tell me this step, tell me. I didn't have to by heart it. Like I could use a manual and textbook and do a lot of those things. Yeah, and here it's like just know that like we did one theory in one class, we read it once per week and know a little bit about it. But here there are people who also be like, oh, I have no idea how this theory is. In India, you could not do that. Like you had to know Adler's theory exactly what it is. You had to know Hans Ising, you had to know neo FFI, and how do you do the scoring. Like I still have it by heart on the top of my head. I can close my eyes and be like, okay, you first do this, you read out the instructions that is on the front of the page. After they finish, and I even remember the instructions by heart pretty much. And then how do you score it? And like they have like a scoring right under, reverse scoring, all of those things. Like where is the scoring sheet, what do you do then, what do you do next, what do you do then, how do you compare it? Everything had to be by hearted. So I think that's a huge difference. I think that's all the slideshow that I have, and I think it's a significantly long video. But all I'm trying to say is that I mean, because I mean, this is not a direct comparison of what's different in masters and bachelors, but I think I tried to touch up on a lot of it. Mainly is because in India we all have like, if you choose a college, then the college makes your course path for you, right? Here also, I have to do certain courses, but like I can choose to do an alternate courses instead of this one. So there's a lot more option. Again, not everybody does internship in the same place or practicum in the same place. Practicum is basically before internship. So not you can choose where you want to go, and you can choose to work with a certain population. Again, we have limited resources. We don't have lots of options for research. Again, here in PhD, you can choose to do more research, or you can do more clinical practice. In India, again, we have very limited options for research. We rarely have like a research oriented master's program in psychology. So I think huge differences in those. But there are lots of benefits. I personally feel like I got the best of both worlds, because I got like the rigorous way of, I mean, or like a very rigid but very thorough, whole entire course of psychology, because I had to take psychology from basically 11th standard itself to be able to get into a master's program. So when you, and because it's like a government, Mumbai University would direct how BA courses are. Because it was like that, it was standardized across the whole city. And then for HSC psychology, it's the same, it's the same for the whole state, right? And I've done a whole lecture series on HSC psychology, so you can see that. But it's the same across the whole state, which means things like these, I think, would just make a huge difference. So, which means that we are less flexible. If you just decided to do psychology after finishing your bachelor's, you have lesser options. In my times, you had no options. Like if you wanted to be a psychologist, you needed to make sure that you get it from your bachelor's. And in bachelor's also, like, you can choose psychology in your first year, but like to major in psychology, there are only 24 seats, and there's like a huge number of people competing for it. So you need to make sure you get good marks. So a lot of those things. So there was rigidity in that, which means that you just can't choose to do what you want to do and switch streams whenever you like. But again, the benefit of that was that you get like a very solid foundation starting from 11th standard. So 2 years of 11th, 3 years of bachelor's, 2 years of master's, that itself is your being exposed to the field of psychology in itself for like, my brain is slow, 7 years, out of which 3 years, which is your third year of bachelor's and 2 years of master's, you're studying psychology day in, day out. You're only studying psychology, nothing else, and that to all advanced level courses, right? Um, so yeah, I think again, like I said, when we studied assessment and when I studied IQ, my course was assessment. So I was only studying IQ, how to administer IQ in my assessment course. Why? Because I had an extremely strong foundation. I knew what intelligence tests were. Same with personality. When I learned to administer personality tests, I had a very strong foundation from all my theories of personality course. And I also studied personality in my 11th and 12th standard. Abnormal psychology had already studied in my 11th and 12th standard through one chapter. Positive psychology again comes at different points again in my BA also, in one of the courses, I think in counseling course, one of the modules was on positive psychology. So it's like you keep building this foundation to the extent that like you become pretty much strong in your theory and in your, and finally then I think if you just go out there, I think it's a very beautiful idea to be able to combine psychology with counseling skills. And that happens in India pretty much. Here in America, very good news is that's very flexible. You did a bachelor's in theater, or you did a bachelor's in anthropology, and you have not taken psychology. Um, you might still be able to like find a university where you can apply, do something basic in psychology and be able to do it, right? I have lots of friends in my, literally in my PhD program, who have no background in psychology, maybe may have taken a basic, or like they agree to take like basic course after coming. But it's like the expectation is like, yeah, you should have a basic foundation, but they're bachelors in sociology. So it's fine. And so that's the beauty of the flexibility that it comes with. And again, it can be overwhelming because just imagine you just did a basic 1 year, you took 4 courses on psychology, and now you're expected to see clients directly. Whereas for me, I had 6 years of exposure to psychology before I started seeing clients, right? So I think things like that matter. And these are the small differences. I hope this video helps, and let me know if you have any other questions. I hope you have a good day, and best of luck.